Is Yojimbo a great example of a Western, or is it just like any other samurai film, especially one done by Akira Kurosawa? That's what we hope to answer today on Really Old Movies. All right, welcome to Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin, and today's episode I'll be discussing Akira Kurosawa's classic Yojimbo, which was released in 1961. And the way I'm going to structure and format these podcasts is going to be a lot more different. It's going to be more dialogue driven and a lot more historical information, behind the scenes facts. I want to make it more interesting and more intriguing and more than just my review. That being said, I won't be giving any other person's reviews. I'm going to be only giving my review. That's going to stay the same. And I'm still going to mention the specific elements of movies that I really liked, but for the most part, it's going to be different. So the newest section is called Essential Movie Information, which I've labeled as EMP, and basically that's going to be behind the scenes details about the movie. So for this one, Yojimbo is the first film in a two-part story. Sanjuro is the sequel to it, and both of them are directed by Akira Kurosawa, and both of them star Toshiro Mifune. Now, this one was released on September 13th in 1961 in the United States. It made more money internationally than any of his other films. One of the biggest movies that was heavily influenced by Yojimbo is A Fistful of Dollars. In fact, it's a complete rip-off, if you will, of it, because they didn't pay Akira Kurosawa royalties or anything like that. So as a result, Toho, the studio that made Yojimbo, they sued Sergio Leone, who's the director of A Fistful of Dollars. And as a result, Toho received 15% of all the earnings from that movie. So, needless to say, it's an important movie, and a lot of people really liked it and really liked the storyline. And I'll give a short synopsis. That's the next new part is I'll be giving a basic synopsis of the plot. I won't be like in the past I've done where I tell the entire plot. I'm just going to think of it as like when you're watching it on a television or something like that, and it gives like a short description. It's going to be something like that. The story is a samurai played by Toshiro Mifune. He encounters a village that has two gangs that are running it. Rather than choosing a side, he has both sides fight for his abilities because he's a really talented samurai and they want to have him on their individual sides. So he kind of plays both of them. And it's a really, really interesting storyline and really interesting plot. Now, I won't spoil it. I do want people to still watch it on their own. But if you've seen A Fistful of Dollars, it's essentially the exact same thing. But yeah, it's a great plot. And I was very impressed with it. To me, this is one of the better Akira Kurosawa films. I've seen this film, I've seen Seven Samurai, The Hidden Fortress, and Rashomon. Seven Samurai is still my favorite, but this is a really good one as well. So now I'll get into what I normally did, which was the plot, acting, directing, cinematography, special effects, music, and then my final letterbox score. So the plot, like I just said, I really, really liked. I gave it a 5 out of 5. I think this is probably the best storyline I've ever seen in regards to a Akira Kurosawa film. It's not his best work, but I still gave it a 5 out of 5. I really liked Toshiro Mifune's character and how the story was moving along. It really felt like an old fable or an old tale. I was very impressed with that. And the acting, I also gave a 5 out of 5. Even the secondary characters I felt were perfect casting choices, great actors and actresses. They were really realistic, especially when they were fearful or when they were trying to be funny. It was really impressive, really good stuff. And then directing-wise, I love Akira Kurosawa. I think he's a great director. I think he needs to be studied even more than he has. And I gave him a 5 out of 5. Love his style. I love these samurai era films. And in this one in particular, it takes place in the 19th century. Like the main villain, he has a pistol. So it's like the slow infiltration of westernization into Japan. So it's very impressive stuff. And he did a great job, great casting choices. He uses a lot of the same people, but there's a good reason why, because they're all really talented, really good actors. And even the scenes where I felt were kind of long and all of that, you can really tell he knew what he was doing. He could tell a story with the camera. Very impressed with that. Now, speaking of that, cinematography and special effects, I gave it 4.5 out of 5. Just because in some scenes it's pretty obvious that Toshiro Mifune wasn't actually hitting people. It looked pretty fake. In his other films, especially Seven Samurai, it looked a lot more realistic, so I felt they could have done a lot more with it than they did. So that's why I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. It was still good. I think the fighting scenes in particular could have done more work. Music-wise, I gave it 3 out of 5. There's not much of a score to it. I'm not a huge fan of the music that they use in these movies. To me, it's kind of jarring and really loud when it should be kind of slow and contemplative, but it's not. It's like loud and sounds more like a circus or something like that. It's not my cup of tea. I'm not a huge fan of it. So tallying that all up, that brings it to a 4.5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. I think that's the same score I gave Seven Samurai, so it's like up there with it. It's a good movie. And would I recommend this? Absolutely. If you're a huge fan of Westerns, because this movie in particular, not only did it inspire Westerns, it was inspired by Westerns. High Noon, Shane, those are just a few that Akira Kurosawa attributed to being inspirations. And then this film went to inspire, like I said, a Fistful of Dollars, the whole Dollars trilogy, really. The Man with No Name is very similar to Sanjuro. I really like it. I'm liking samurai movies a lot. And I really recommend checking it out for the story and for some of the action, even if it's a little hokey sometimes. All right, well, those are my thoughts and feelings on Akira Kurosawa's legendary film, Yojimbo. I'm looking forward to Sanjuro, which is the sequel. Not sure when I'll review that, but I'll review it at some point. But thank you so much for listening to today's episode. And new episodes are released Fridays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And make sure to follow my Instagram at Really Old Movies, where I post updates and where I post behind-the-scenes information about the week's particular film. If you click on the link in the description, you'll find all my other social media handles on Clubhouse, on Twitter, Facebook, Getter, pretty much anywhere you could think of. I have a profile there. And make sure to follow my YouTube channel. I'll be starting out doing live streams. That's something I'm going to start out with. February 19th of this year will be my first ever live stream. And on this particular one, I'll be talking about 1920s movies and my top 10 favorite ones. That will be at, like I said, February 19th at 4 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So come prepared with your list as well. No matter how big or small your list is, come and bring it. I want to hear your guys' thoughts as well on 1920s movies. To me, it's a decade that I didn't think I would like. Over the years, I've seen maybe 20 or 30 1920s movies now, and I've liked a good chunk of them. It's not talked about as much because it's mainly a silent era, and not a lot of people like silent movies. But to me, I've seen past the title cards, and I think they're great. And that's why I have 10 on this list here. All right. Well, thanks again for listening to today's episode. And again, we premiere at Fridays at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Thank you so much. This has been Really Old Movies. I'm your host, Harrison Scullin. Take care.